welcome to another episode of Sips with Scrubs. Today we are sipping on that good old H2O. I have my water here, and that's what I'll be sipping on throughout this episode. For those who are listening, if you hear me pausing, that's what I'm doing. I'm drinking me a little bit of water, keep my throat and keep me hydrated. Because shoot, I get a little dry after talking to y'all for so long. No snack today. I'm still good off of lunch. So now we're going to get into what will Lainey do. I got this question off of one of my nursing Facebook groups that I'm a part of. So the nurse asked, question, and then she put the little emoji of the girl raising her hand. I'll be working nights as a new RN next week for the first time ever. I was a second shift LPN for 6 years, and I'm just wondering, for the people who work nights, do y'all eat? And then she put the laughing emoji. I mean, what do y'all eat? Full meals, snacks, because COVID in school already got me extra fluffy this time around, but I just recently had surgery, and I've been using that to get back right. Please help, or I'll be drinking water and eating ice all night. So I picked that question to bring to the podcast because it's always, I feel like everybody always wants to know, like, nights are like completely different. And I feel like people who are going to go into work at nights, they want to know, like, what do you do and how does this work and things of that nature. So I did do nights for 2 years. I told you guys, I lose track of time. Like, my whole nursing experience has been a blur. So sometimes I have to pull out the receipts to see when I was doing what. I believe that I worked nights for 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. And that actually sounds longer than I thought it was. I believe it's 3 years. And what I did is I actually did eat throughout my nights. I actually feel like I was healthier on nights than I am on days because there was limited, like, food. On nights, you just basically could eat what you brought, and if you didn't bring anything, then you were SOL. Everything was already closed by like 9-10 o'clock, and honestly, in the beginning of the shift, it was the busiest, so it's not like I really had a lot of opportunities to go down anyway to get to the cafeteria. And I think actually the cafeteria closed before that. I think it might have been like at 8 or 9, something like that. But nevertheless, I always packed my own food. I still pack my own food, but now I have the extra temptation of walking down to the cafeteria on days, whereas on nights, that was not an option. If I was really fiending for something unhealthy, I had to go in my car and go to Whataburger or something like that. So on nights, like I said, I did eat full meals. I ate before I went into work, and I feel like it was kind of like breakfast type of food that I ate before I went into work, and then I would trying to snack healthy throughout the night, and then I would eat like around 1 or 2, like an actual like lunch, like real food. And then I would snack again, and then when I got home, I ate breakfast food again. I'm not sure why I ate breakfast food again. I guess because it was the morning time, so I feel like I should have. So it's kind of funny because I ate breakfast twice when I was working nights and only like one regular meal, but that's kind of how I proceeded with that whole scenario. It was very difficult to like not eat. I know everybody's body is like a little bit different, so some people did that, but for me, I was hungry, okay? Like, it was a must that I ate, so I ate, okay? So I had full meals, I did snacks, and I drank primarily water. I had like a big old gallon jug that I used to bring to work towards the end of my night shifts that I was trying to drink, and that actually assisted with helping me stay awake too throughout the night. So that's basically what I did, and that's all I got to say on that. So like I said, I've mentioned before in the previous episode, a lot of stuff with nursing is trial and error. You don't, like, you're not going to know what to do until you're doing it, and you're not going to know what's going to work for you. That's just how it is. Literally trial and error. You'll ask people, like, what did you do? Or how did you do this? You'll try it, then you'll tweak it, tweak it, whatever. I do have another episode on my YouTube channel when it was still called Talk Nurse With Me, discussing health and fitness. And I also included like the night shift on there. And then I also have another episode on there talking about day shift versus night shift. So if you guys are interested in that, y'all can check those out too. They're kind of in the same vein. And I went into like a lot of detail between the differences between night shift and day shift. And then like with the health and fitness one, I went into a lot of detail of what I did, like what was my routine working on nights in regards to that. So if you guys are interested in that, y'all can check that out on YouTube. It's not available on the podcast because this is the rebrand if you guys have not been staying up to date. So we're going to get into our topic. So today we're going to be talking about help, like asking for help and knowing when to receive help as a nurse. This is one of those episodes where I'm just going off the dome once again. I have some where it'll be more scripted, and then I have some where it's just kind of like I want authentic and genuine thoughts on the topic. And so I just talk, and hopefully y'all can follow my thought processes, because I can be a little scatterbrained, I feel like sometimes. So hopefully they kind of flow. But like I mentioned, we're going to talk about knowing when to ask for help and knowing how to accept help, because those are not the same thing. And I recently discovered that when I was put into a situation. So I'm going to talk about that situation real quick, and then we'll go into a breakdown of each of those scenarios and what the differences are and my thoughts on them. So a lot of these topics come to me like through my life experiences, like my nursing life experiences. And then when it happens, I kind of be like, and then it's just a thought, and then I put it down in my notes so I don't forget it. So one day, I was working as a float pool nurse. Like I told y'all before, that's my most recent job. That's what I'm currently doing now. So like, I don't know where I'm going most of the time when I'm in the medical center until I'm going to the staffing office that morning. And then I look at the paper and then I see what unit I'm on. I'm still fairly new in that role, so I don't know all of the units. In the medical center hospital is huge, and med surg is so wide range. So it's literally, I could be anywhere. Like I've worked psych, I've worked ortho, I've worked stroke. Like it's just anything and everything you can get. So it's kind of fun and then slightly intimidating, but given my background, I'm a little bit more comfortable, I think, than most would be. So this particular day, I can't even remember which unit I was on. I believe it was some type of surgical floor, which I'm kind of finding out that I like those, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So on this unit, like I was doing good. Like the day was a pretty good day. I had a good grasp of everything. My patients were not very demanding. They didn't have a lot of medications. And I'm just like, okay, today's a typical good day where I'm not doing much. Like I'm working, but I'm not working hard, if that makes sense. And I can't even remember in detail. I probably should have written it down, and maybe in future reference I will, where this thought stimulated from. But I remember somebody asked me for help, and I kind of like paused for a second, because people ask you for help. No, ask you, do you need help is what I'm trying to say. People ask you, do you need help all the time as a nurse? Or that's been my experience. A good portion of the time, someone will ask like, hey, how are you doing? You doing okay today? Do you need help with anything? Like at least one person I feel like will ask you that. Now, whether or not it's genuine or not, that's another topic for another day. But sometimes people will ask you that. So especially as a float pool nurse, since that's not my original unit, people ask me all the time like, hey, do you need help with anything? Or are you doing okay? Or, you know, things like that, especially like the charge nurse. So this particular shift, I think some random nurse asked me, did I need help with anything? And I was really about to tell her no, because I didn't need help with anything. But then I was thinking to myself like, well, if they have time and they can do this and I can go do something else, and that'll knock two things off of my list. So instead of saying no, which is what I normally would have done, I said, yeah, do you have time to do this for me? And then she said, yeah. And then she did it for me while I went to go do something else. And I was like, it's kind of interesting, because technically I did not need help. Like I could have done everything, but why would I? Then I thought to myself, why would you do everything when you don't have to do everything? So that just stimulated the thought, like knowing how to accept help. I feel like a lot of people have problems with one, asking for help, but then there's another dimension to knowing when to accept help. So that's why I wanted to talk about that today, because I was one of those people, all right, and I had to check myself, like, no, you can accept help. Like, this will take something off your plate and you can do something else and you won't be as busy. It's not like you have to be drowning every time in order to receive help. You could just have help because help is there and is being offered to you. And I feel, like I said, a lot of the times we don't do that or even have that thought to do that, or at least I didn't. So that's how that thought got stimulated for today's episode. So I first want to encourage, especially my newer nurses, because I feel like they are the ones who have those sorts of problems with knowing when to ask for help. Knowing when to ask for help is essential in nursing, because it's kind of like closed mouths don't get fed sort of thing. People don't know what you're struggling with in nursing unless you ask, like, what is this, or I need help with this, or whatever. Because we're all like kind of living in our own worlds. We all have our own set of patients, and we're like, what's it called? I cannot think of the word. Not indulged, but we're like submerged or something in that person's life and in our patient's life for that moment. We have 4 to 6 patients, or however many you have as your nurse to patient ratio, and you're like in their lives and you're only worried about them. Sometimes it's hard to worry about yourself or to worry about your coworkers. So unless somebody pulls you out of that and be like, oh, hey, like, I need help with this, like, we kind of forget about you. So I want to encourage my new nurses, especially right now, know when to ask for help, and don't be scared to ask for help, and don't be scared to think something is a stupid question, because especially with our career, like, it's life or death. And that sounds so dramatic, but it's so true. And no, like, literally, if you don't ask somebody for help on certain things, like, the patient could die. So you have to get over that. We might have to talk about that on another episode. How do you get over being scared to ask for help? I just think that you just have to don't care. You have to have an element of, like, don't care what people think about you in order to ask for help, even when you're like, oh, this might be stupid, but hey, I just want to make sure. And I'm not that type of person where I feel like somebody can make me feel dumb, because I know I'm not that. And I want you guys to know you're not that. You're a nurse for a reason. You passed the NCLEX. We were put through rigorous training in order to get to where we are. So you have to be some sort of intelligent in order to be a nurse. Like, stupid people couldn't do our job, and that's just straight facts. So you have to encourage yourself and be like, no, I'm not dumb. It might be a dumb question, but I'm not dumb. And you can't. And with that, like, no one can make you feel dumb, because you're not. So don't think like, oh, this is stupid, I should know this by now. You can't know everything as a nurse. There's still stuff that I don't know as a nurse, so I ask. There's always somebody that's going to be more experienced than you and knows more than you, so you can lean on them. And they've been in the same situation that you've been in before, so don't let certain nurses intimidate you, or just write them off as, oh, I can't ask this nurse this question because she acts like this, let me ask somebody else. Things like that. So know when to ask for help. If knowing when to ask for help, that's kind of like any type of uncertainties. Like, you need to operate in a sense of you're 100% certain this is what this is. And if you're not, then that's when you ask for help. Like I said, a lot of decisions we make can be costly to our patients, so we have to know for sure what we're doing. That's also why we have a lot of resources at our fingertips. So if you're a patient's like, oh, what is this medication for? Look it up. If you don't know it off the top of your head, you haven't given it multiple times, go ahead and look it up. Even before you get to that point where your patient is asking you what it is, if you're administering like a medication that you've never administered before, it's very prudent of you to go ahead and look it up before you even take it out the Pyxis machine to see what it is, because you don't know what it's affecting. You don't know what the expected outcome is from it, as well as like the adverse effects or side effects, which is all stuff that you need to be aware of, as well as complications, because if something starts happening to your patient after you administer it, then you would know like, oh, that's an expected side effect from this medication. That's not really anything to be worried about. Or it's like, okay, this is one of those complications I read about. Let me go message the doctor to see if there's something else I could give to this patient to alleviate that. So you need to be well informed as a nurse. So if you have any type of uncertainty about a medication or anything like that, go ahead and look it up. It literally only takes you not even 2 minutes to do. Pull up the pharmacology thing on your internet, type it in, and then you'll know from there. And then from doing that, you'll probably remember it going forward. And then when you get to the point where your patient's like, what's this? Then you could be like, oh, hey, this affects your blood pressure, so we'll be keeping an eye on it. Or I can't give you this medication because I need to check your blood pressure before I administer it to you. So that's why that sort of thing is important, because that's what medications are for. They affect a lot of different things. So if something is contingent on what the blood pressure is or what the heart rate is or what some lab value is, you need to know that beforehand. So you wouldn't be able to do that if you don't know anything about the medication, is the point. So you have that sort of resource. Your charge nurse is a resource if you're not sure about anything. If it's like a medication, something, I would just look that up on the pharmacology thing, or you could either call pharmacy to verify something for you. Same thing with IV compatibility. If you're administering IV fluid continuously and then you have antibiotics that are supposed to be infused, go ahead and look it up, see if you can piggyback it, or if you have to run it through another primary tubing on a different channel. You got to see if you could Y-side it, or if you possibly need another IV place in order to run both of those medications at the same time. Like, it's a lot of stuff that goes into being a nurse. So that's why you need to know when to ask for help, because like I said, there's just no way that you will remember everything. It's impossible. Like, a lot of the stuff you will learn through repetition, and that's cool, but a lot of stuff, like I said, you have to have experience to get the practice in to remember everything. So especially in the beginning, if there's any sort of doubt, go ahead and ask somebody. Like I said, use the pharmacology thing on the internet, call pharmacy. When I have a question about what tube color is this, or what is this lab or whatever, I call lab for that. You can even ask your doctor sometimes, especially if they're there. If they're in the room with the patient, sometimes they'll explain it to the patient before you're doing it. So it is helpful to round with the doctors, because then you'll be learning too if you're not familiar with certain things. And like I said, you also have the charge nurse as a resource. I mostly use the charge nurses as a resource if it comes to like hospital policy type stuff. Like I'm trying to think of like a scenario. But more so like, oh, I haven't monitored a chest tube in a while. Can you show me how to do that again? Or I did this. Can you make sure that this is correct? Or can I have help inserting an NG tube? I haven't done it in like a year. Stuff like that is what I'll get the charge nurse for. Or if I tried a way and it didn't work for one of those skills, like IV or something, any of the nursing skills, I'd be like, hey, I tried to do this. Can you come with me to make sure I'm doing it right? Or is there a better way to put an ostomy bag on the patient to keep it from leaking? Like, stuff like that is what I use the charge nurse for. Everything else, I kind of like try to go to that department. And then if they're not able to answer that for me, I'll go to the charge nurse. But it's essential that you just know when to ask for help, as I said before, because it can be costly, and everything as a nurse falls back on you. And at the end of the day, you're the one responsible because you did it. And I know y'all been seeing them court cases lately. Like, you don't want to end up in jail, girl, or on probation, or lose your license that you worked so hard for. So I think that's all I have to say on knowing when to ask for help. If you guys have any additional comments in regards to that, go ahead and let me know what you got to say on that topic. If y'all have any scenarios when you were afraid to ask for help and you did it anyway, and how it proved to be like beneficial for your patient, go ahead and comment those down below so we can share with each other, and we can like actually see like real life stories like, oh dang, like I guess I really should ask for help, you know? So let's encourage each other, because I know as a new nurse, it is very difficult to do that. And You just think you're supposed to know everything because now you're a nurse. And like I said, that's just not the case. It's not realistic at all. So now we're going to get into knowing how to accept help, which is another dimension. So that's kind of where I'm at in life, is knowing when to accept help. Because I've been doing this for a good amount of time, and I know how to do a lot of things, and I know I can do a lot of things. So when you get this far into the game, you're kind of like picky about certain things, like, oh, I want this done like this, or this is how I would do it, or I would do it faster, or I could do it better. So you try to do everything. And it's like, no, that's how you get burnt out real quick. So you need to know how to delegate, and you need to know how to accept help. So let's talk about the delegation for a bit. Sometimes I have to tell myself, like, no, the tech can do that. No, this person can do that. You don't have to do everything. And that's also impossible as well, as a lot of you will come to realize if you haven't realized already. So if it comes between, this patient wants their food warmed up, but I have some more meds to pass in this room, and that might take me a considerable amount of time. That's kind of like a light example, because warming up food probably won't take you that long. So you could probably do that in a couple of minutes and then proceed to take to do the meds or whatever. But say, for instance, the tech was already in there doing something, and then the patient asked for that, but they don't volunteer to warm up the food. You just be like, oh, hey, do you mind warming up this food? I'm going to go pass meds in this room. And a lot of times when you phrase stuff like that, I know some people have issues with their text. I don't really get into it with text a lot. Like, I get along with them pretty well because I set clear expectations. I let them know, like, this is what I'm going to do. Can you do this or whatever? And a lot of times I feel like it's an easier pill to swallow for text when you say it like that. And instead of being like, you do this or you do that or whatever, being so demanding as a nurse, letting them know, like, oh, I got this going on and I'm helping somebody else do this. Can you do this? I think it helps a lot. So I phrase a lot of my stuff that way. So if they're already in the room, I'll be like, oh, hey, like I just said, can you go warm this up while I go pass meds in this room? Thank you. And then, and then when you say it in front of the patient, it kind of gives like extra reinforcement, because now they know who's supposed to do it. So if they don't do it, you won't really have the responsibility of that. So that's just like a little slick way. And then they can't really say no, but sometimes they might have something else going on too, and they'll be like, I can't because I have to go do this real quick. And I'll be like, all right, I'll just warm it up real quick and I'll come right back. And I'll do it like that. Now, there's some things that are a little bit more tedious than food warming, because like I said, that only takes a couple of minutes. Another example that I could think of off the top of my head is kind of like patients with baths and stuff, because that can take a very long time. Because you have to get all of the stuff for the bath. You got to wrap their IV, get them disconnected from whatever if they're connected to something. And I mean, you're really not supposed to leave the room with them because of falls and stuff like that. So then you kind of have to stick around to make sure they're okay. So those could take a long time. And then some patients, they just move so slow. And it's like, girl, I have a life. I have other patients. You gotta come on. So stuff like that, you can ask the tech to do while you go do whatever else you got to do. You don't have to be like, okay, let me go get all your stuff, and then you in there for 30 minutes, and then you still in the middle of your med pass that you haven't completed. You get new orders on top of that, and now you behind. So that's how you need to delegate to other people, because the most that you could get off your plate, do it. It doesn't matter if you know you can do it, just do it anyway, because something else can always come up where only you can do it. And if only you can do it, then you're responsible for doing it. And they don't care, like, why did you not do this? Or why did you not do that? So you can't be like, well, I couldn't do that stat lab because I was in there giving my patient a bath. They'll be like, what? Or you got a patient that cold or something, and you over here doing some type of menial task, like trying to change one of your other patients, and your other patient over here coding. Like, you can't do that. So like I said, the most that you can get off of your plate, do that. So that's just talking about the delegation aspect of helping. And now Like I said, knowing how to accept help. If somebody asks you, can they help you with something, and you have multiple things that you need to do, even though you don't feel busy, just go ahead and let them do something. Like I said, the more that you can take off your plate, the better, because there's less work for you. Instead of you having to be like, okay, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta do this, and then I'm gonna go do that, and then I'm gonna go pee. Like, no. If somebody asks, like, oh, hey, you got anything you need me to do? Yeah, actually, I was gonna go past this mat in this room real quick. Do you mind taking such and such to the restroom? Or do you mind giving them this? Like, it really does help, because like I said, literally it's just taking stuff off your plate. So that's one item removed off of your plate, and you could go concentrate on something else, and then you'll be done sooner in your day. So that pretty much concludes today's episode. And I don't know if you guys had ever thought about like the concept of accepting help and things of that nature, but if you have, do the same thing like we did for knowing when to ask for help. Go ahead and comment down below, like a situation like I did where you had to accept help and how it helped you out. We just need to do better as nurses in some things, because I feel like we think that we like some type of superhero and we're trying to do all of these things, and it's just like, you can't. And you need to be okay with that. You need to be okay with asking for help. You need to be okay with accepting help. You need to be aware of all the things you got going on, and that you can't possibly do everything on your own. That's why we have all of these people to help us as a nurse. That's why we have all of these ancillary staff. You got respiratory therapy. You have all of these people, physical therapy. Hey, do you mind walking this patient? Hey, do you mind suctioning such and such? I gotta go do this. You got wound care. That's why all these jobs are here. We technically are qualified to do all of the stuff that they do, but they're there for a reason, and they're there to help. So utilize your resources and be nice to the ancillary staff. Be nice to the people who trying to help you. I think that's part of the reason why sometimes people get a little testy with nurses, because they like, dang, this nurse don't do nothing. I mean, put in your work too, but just, don't abuse them. But, take some things off your plate at the same time. So once again, it was good talking to you guys. I did not sip on one drop of water throughout this episode, and now my throat is dry. So hopefully you were sipping on something good. Hopefully you learned something from this episode. As always, it was nice talking to y'all. I'm going to see you guys next week in the next Sips with Scrub episode. If you guys have any topics that you would like for me to discuss, or if there's anybody else that you would like on this platform, like, comment down below. Definitely let me know. I'll try to make it work. I don't know when I could get it to you, but I know I will get it to you. So keep me in the loop. I created this so that we can have an open dialogue, and I like talking to y'all. So go ahead and do that. If you're on my YouTube channel, go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you guys haven't already. And I will see you guys next week in my next episode.